My name is Belle Harrison, 29, pediatric oncologist in Boston. The chowder hit like a freight train, scalding clam broth exploding across my face, dripping from my hair onto the cream-colored tablecloth at Mom's 51st birthday party. My brother Austin slammed the empty bowl down and snarled, "You've got 15 minutes to get out of this family." Mom and Dad stared at their plates like they'd been painted there. My younger sister Vanessa actually started clapping like I'd just performed the world's worst magic trick. I wiped my stinging eyes, reached into my leather bag, and pulled out the thick manila folder I'd been carrying for 3 months. Dropped it on the table with a thud that silenced even Vanessa's theatrical applause. "Fine," I said, my voice colder than a New England winter. 15 minutes from now, everything you think you own disappears. Growing up in Portland, Maine, our family lived in a drafty colonial on the edge of Casco Bay. The house had been settling since the 70s, with warped floors and a screened porch that caught every Atlantic gust. Dad, Robert Harrison, worked brutal hours as a marine engineer, coming home smelling of diesel and salt water most nights. Mom, Linda Harrison, taught 5th grade at the local elementary school and perpetually smelled like erasers and fruit snacks. Austin arrived when I was 4. The middle child who somehow became the son everyone else orbited. From day one, he got the best of our modest means. Private tutoring scraped together from Dad's overtime, new basketball shoes every season, and a used motorcycle for his 11th birthday that Dad spent 3 weekends fixing up. Mom would practically glow when Austin brought home a C++, saying he just needed to find his passion. Dad would high-five him for every recreational league basket, even the air balls. Then Vanessa Harrison arrived 6 years after Austin, the baby who cemented the favoritism into family law. By the time she hit elementary school, the rules had been completely rewritten. Her school was the prestigious charter academy across town, the kind with iPads for every student and a French immersion program. Mom drove her there every morning, packing organic bento boxes while I rode the yellow bus with a turkey sandwich in a paper bag. Vanessa's ballet recital got front-row seats for the entire family. My robotics competition wins earned a distracted, "That's nice, honey," before Dad turned back to the Patriots game. Money for Austin's hobbies flowed like the ocean outside our windows. Drum lessons, lacrosse camps, even a cushy internship at Dad's engineering firm that was basically paid hanging out. When Austin turned 17, a silver Jeep Wrangler appeared in the driveway, Dad's bonus from a government contract. Vanessa hit 19 and got a pearl white Volkswagen, keys handed over at her graduation party, complete with champagne and a cake shaped like the Eiffel Tower. I watched from the sidelines, hoarding every dollar from my hospital rotations to pay down my medical school loans. Meanwhile, Grandpa Walter Harrison lived 40 minutes north in a modest Cape Cod cottage filled with old pharmaceutical journals and vintage medical equipment from his glory days. Grandpa Walter had built something real back in the 60s. A small pharmaceutical distribution company that supplied antibiotics and cardiac medications to rural Maine clinics, before selling to a national chain for a solid profit. In his later years, his body slowed down, but his mind stayed razor-sharp as ever. Dad visited maybe once a year, always rushing through with excuses about project deadlines and tied schedules. Mom sent birthday cards, but rarely showed up in person, claiming parent-teacher conferences or school fundraisers. Austin ignored Grandpa's invitations completely, blowing off Sunday dinners for parties with friends, texting vague excuses about being swamped, even when Grandpa called directly. Vanessa was somehow worse. She'd promised to visit after dance practice, then ghost him with stories about study groups or shopping trips to Freeport. Grandpa never complained out loud, but I saw the disappointment settle in his eyes like fog on the bay when another call went unanswered. I made the effort. Every month, regardless of my brutal residency schedule, I either flew up from Boston or drove the 2 hours up Route 1. We'd sit on his weathered deck overlooking a small marsh, drinking black coffee while he recounted stories of early antibiotic trials and the patients whose lives were saved by medications he'd distributed. He'd quiz me on pharmacology and anatomy, nodding with approval at my answers. "You've got the calling, Belle." he'd say quietly, his voice rough from years of pipe tobacco. The others, they're just skating through. I'd brush it off as old man nostalgia, but his words stuck with me like surgical glue. One weekend when I was 26, Grandpa pulled me aside after lunch, his hands trembling slightly as he showed me a faded photograph of his first warehouse team. "Keep pushing," he whispered, gripping my hand. "Medicine needs people who care more about saving lives than Instagram likes." Austin had skipped that visit for a surfing trip to Cape Cod. Vanessa texted that she had cramps. Grandpa didn't mention them again that afternoon, but I noticed he stopped setting extra places at his kitchen table. Holidays highlighted the divide with surgical precision. Thanksgiving meant Austin carving the turkey like he was accepting an award, Vanessa snapping selfies with her homemade pie. Grandpa sat at the far end of the table, picking at his mashed potatoes while Dad monopolized conversation with work stories about offshore drilling platforms. Mom fussed over the younger two, refilling their wine glasses before anyone else even asked. I helped clear dishes, catching Grandpa's glance across the cramped kitchen. He'd mouth thank you when nobody was watching, and I'd nod back, our silent acknowledgement of who actually showed up. Summers brought more of the same painful patterns. Austin and Vanessa would lounge on rental boats Dad financed, blasting country music across the bay. Grandpa's invitations for fishing went ignored, texts left unread. I'd join him instead, casting lines in comfortable silence while he shared wisdom about patience and precision. Lessons that applied to pediatric oncology as much as they did to hooking striped bass. "Details matter, Belle," he'd repeat, watching the water. "Miss them and everything falls apart." By my late 20s, the pattern was set in stone. Austin would drop hints about needing cash for business ideas, getting quick checks from Dad without a single question asked. Vanessa's college fund grew fat, while mine came from scholarships I'd hunted down alone, staying up until 2 in the morning perfecting essays. 8 years into my grueling Boston residency, the pediatric oncology ward became my second home. Cases piled up. Neuroblastomas, leukemias, tumors in children who should have been worrying about homework, not chemo. I thrived under the pressure, finding veins in tiny arms while parents watched with desperate hope in their eyes. Colleagues called me relentless. Parents called me their miracle. The breakthrough came during an overnight shift when a 6-year-old girl named Sophie arrived with a rare cardiac tumor pressing on her heart. Transported by helicopter from Vermont, her vitals crashing. The attending handed me the lead. First time for this complex procedure. I spent 11 hours removing the tumor, reconstructing the chamber wall, praying my hands wouldn't slip. When she opened her eyes the next morning and asked for her stuffed elephant, I nearly collapsed with relief. Local news exploded. Young doctor saves Vermont girl splashed across the Boston Globe. My photo appeared in the health section. Reporters called me the heart whisperer from Maine. Camera crews camped outside Children's Hospital. Interviews followed. Local news, medical podcasts, NPR affiliates. Sophie's parents sent a handwritten note with a crayon drawing from their daughter. "Thank you for fixing my heart, Dr. Bell." Their family foundation donated new equipment to our oncology wing. My name circulated in medical circles. Fellowship offers flooded my email inbox. I stayed focused, already studying the next chart. Back home, Austin chased different dreams. At 24, he'd quit community college after 2 semesters, declaring traditional education a scam for sheep. He launched HealthSync, a wearable app promising real-time vital monitoring with AI integration, claiming it would revolutionize preventive medicine. Small investors bit first, then bigger banks. Dad co-signed the initial loan, but Austin needed more fuel for his rocket ship. A regional lender approved $1.8 million based on slick prototypes and Austin's considerable charisma. He rented a trendy co-working space in downtown Portland, hired developers straight from coding boot camps, and plastered marketing everywhere. Photos of Austin in hoodies demoing vaporware at tech conferences. Vanessa, then 16, tagged along for photo ops, posing with mock devices like they were already saving lives. Early demonstrations impressed the right people. Beta users signed up in droves. Austin bought a waterfront condo in the Old Port, leased a Tesla on credit. "This is just the beginning," he texted the family group chat, accompanied by champagne emojis. But cracks appeared fast. Coding delays mounted. Servers crashed during critical tests. 3 competitors launched similar features at half the price each. Funding rounds stalled. Investors wanted revenue, not more renders. Austin doubled down, borrowing against the app's intellectual property. Suppliers demanded upfront payment. Staff quit over bounced paychecks. By year 2, the $1.8 million had evaporated into burn rate. The collapse hit suddenly. A key tech partner pulled out. Lawsuits followed for breached contracts. Bank statements turned crimson. Overdraft fees, collection calls, creditors circling like sharks in Casco Bay. Austin liquidated everything. The condo sold at a massive loss. Tesla repossessed in the middle of the night. He moved into a studio apartment above a Thai restaurant, couch surfing when rent lapsed. Vanessa, now 20 and in her sophomore year at the University of Southern Maine, felt the ripples immediately. Tuition checks bounced. Dad covered 1 semester before his own accounts dried up. She dropped to part-time classes, moving in with Austin to save on dorm costs. They shared takeout, arguing over who'd pay the delivery fee. Vanessa picked up waitressing shifts at a tourist trap on Commercial Street, sending portions of her tips home. Austin kept promising the next pivot would work, but every pitch fell flatter than the last. 3 years ago, Grandpa Walter's health declined steadily. The congestive heart failure he'd once helped others manage was now consuming him. Hospital stays lengthened. Oxygen tanks became permanent fixtures in his cottage. I coordinated his care remotely, consulting with his cardiologist between my own surgical shifts, adjusting his medications, monitoring his labs. Austin sent generic get-well-soon texts that could have been written by a bot. Vanessa posted sympathy emojis on Facebook. The end came quietly on a Tuesday morning. Grandpa slipped away in his sleep, monitors flatlining at dawn. I flew up immediately, handling funeral arrangements while the others showed up late. Austin in wrinkled khakis, Vanessa checking her phone every 5 minutes. The funeral drew a sparse crowd. Old colleagues from the pharma days, a few neighbors, his longtime pharmacist. Dad spoke briefly, his voice hollow. Mom dabbed at dry eyes. Austin kept checking his phone for investor emails. Vanessa scrolled through Instagram during the eulogy. After the service, a lawyer approached me in the parking lot, his wool coat dark against the gray sky. "Miss Harrison," Walter specified private delivery. He handed me a sealed envelope thick with documents. Inside, official letterhead stating confidential inheritance matter designated solely to Belle Harrison. No details, just instructions to call for scheduling. I tucked it away, mind spinning. Back at Grandpa's cottage, the family gathered. Austin eyed Grandpa's vintage watch collection. Vanessa ran her fingers over antique medical instruments. Dad suggested selling the property, splitting proceeds fair and square. I stayed silent, envelope burning against my ribs. The lawyer's words echoed sole designation. I excused myself early, claiming I had an early surgery. Back in Boston, I opened the letter alone in my apartment overlooking the Charles River. It outlined assets, company shares, trust details, property, but sealed sections required in-person verification. "For your eyes only," it stressed in bold type. I locked it in my safe, telling absolutely no one. Austin called 2 weeks later, fishing for information about any paperwork Grandpa might have mentioned. I deflected with work excuses. Debt collectors were calling him daily. Vanessa transferred to community college closer to Austin's apartment, sharing grocery runs to save money. They leaned on Mom for utilities, Dad for car insurance. I sent nothing. My own loans still lingered. Fellowship positions didn't pay enough to cover Boston rent and 6 figures of medical school debt. The secret weighed heavier with each evasive phone call, but I kept my mouth shut. The call came right after a 19-hour shift. my phone buzzing against my scrubs as I collapsed onto the on-call room cot. Austin's name flashed. I answered, expecting another bailout plea. Instead, his voice dripped artificial sweetness. "Hey, Bri. Mom's turning 51 next weekend. Big celebration at the house. The whole family's coming. We're all so proud of you. You know, the famous doctor now." Vanessa jumped on the extension. "Yeah, Belle, you absolutely have to come. It wouldn't be the same without our superstar." Their enthusiasm felt scripted, but exhaustion won. I agreed, muttering something about checking my schedule. Sleep came fitfully. Between morning rounds and discharge summaries, I slipped out to Newberry Street. The boutique jewelry store gleamed under spring sunlight. I selected an elegant silver bracelet for Mom. Delicate chain, small compass charm, understated but beautiful. The clerk engraved, "To Mom, with love." Belle on the inside, boxed and wrapped in ivory paper with a silk ribbon. It cost 3 paychecks, but she was still my mother. Flight options were expensive for last-minute booking. I chose the drive instead, 2 hours up Interstate 95, cutting through coastal towns and pine forests. I packed an overnight bag, filled a thermos with coffee, and loaded a playlist of medical podcasts on cardiac innovations. Hit the road at dawn, Boston's skyline fading in my rearview mirror. Miles ticked by. New Hampshire's tax-free outlets gave way to Maine's rocky coastline. Radio stations shifted from pop to classic rock to country. I stopped once for gas in Kennebunk, stretching my legs under fluorescent lights, thinking about Mom's reaction to the bracelet. My phone pinged halfway. Natalie Cooper, my nurse best friend since internship, texted, "Heard from a Portland contact. Your siblings are asking around about estate lawyers. Don't go. They're cooking something." I stared at the screen, thumbs hovering. Another message. "Austin's been name-dropping your Sophie save to lenders. Smells like a setup." I pulled into a rest stop, engine idling. Natalie and I had met on day 1 of orientation, bonding over impossible hours and impossible cases. She knew the family dynamics, had listened to my rants over cheap wine and cheaper pizza. "Trust your gut," her final text read. My gut said, "Proceed with caution," eyes wide open. I merged back onto I-95. Main welcome signs appearing. Sunset painted Portland's skyline gold as I approached. Familiar exits triggered memories I pushed down. Focus on the party, the gift, getting back to Boston. I arrived after dark, the house glowing with more lights than expected. Parked behind a row of cars, more guests than Mom usually invited. Grabbed the jewelry box, slung my bag over one shoulder. The door opened before I could knock. Austin grinned wide, pulling me into a hug that lasted 3 seconds too long. The hero returns. Vanessa bounced down the hallway, already snapping a selfie. Family reunion, blessed life. Mom appeared from the kitchen, apron dusted with flour. Her eyes widened at my rumpled scrubs. "Belle, honey, you drove all this way." I presented the box. She unwrapped it carefully, gasping as the silver caught the light. "It's absolutely beautiful." She slipped it on, the compass charm catching candlelight. Dad nodded approval from his recliner, beer in hand. Guests milled about. Neighbors, old high school friends, a few faces from Austin's failed venture. Natalie's warning echoed in my skull. Austin steered me toward the kitchen, arm heavy around my shoulders. "We've got big plans for Mom's party. Speeches, toasts, the works." Kayla poured me sweet tea, ice clinking ominously. The backyard glowed under string lights crisscrossing above picnic tables covered in red checkered clothes. Nearly 60 guests mingled on the grass. Cousins I hadn't seen in years. Dad's engineering buddies nursing Sam Adams. Mom's teacher friends clustered near the dessert station. Smoke rose from the grill where lobster rolls sizzled, that distinct Maine smell mixing with salt air from the bay. Mom held court near the cake, my bracelet sparkling as she accepted hugs. Dad manned the grill, apron stained with butter. Austin circulated with a tray of stuffed mushrooms, laughing too loud at every joke. Vanessa posed for endless group photos, phone flash popping like paparazzi. I loaded a paper plate with coleslaw and grilled corn. A neighbor cornered me first. Heard you're saving children's lives down in Boston. More followed. Questions about procedures, city living, whether I'd ever move back to Maine. I answered politely, fork halfway to my mouth each time. Austin spotted me across the lawn, waved me over to his cluster of startup friends and former investors. Everyone, this is the sister I told you about. The pediatric oncologist. Scattered applause. He slung his arm around my shoulders, gripped tight. Health Sync is getting new life. Investors circling again. Prototype 3.0 launches next quarter. Heads nodded, impressed by his confidence. One guy in a Patagonia vest asked technical details. Austin rattled off buzzwords. Machine learning integration. Blockchain health records, restructured debt load, clean slate coming soon. Vanessa chimed in nearby, voice carrying across the yard. And I'm heading overseas. Study abroad program in London, international business semester. More applause. She twirled in her sundress. Puis, fabric flaring. Scholarship covered part of it, saving up for the rest. Guests cooed over her ambition. Conversation shifted to me. An aunt leaned in conspiratorially. Still single, Belle? With that doctor salary, you could buy a mansion. Laughter erupted around the circle. Austin grinned wider. Yeah, but she's still renting a tiny apartment. Dr. Money living on instant ramen. Vanessa joined the pile-on. Seriously, living like a broke med student? Pizza boxes stacked everywhere. When's the upgrade to the luxury life? More chuckles rippled through the group. I forced a smile, chewing slowly, saying nothing. Details mattered. I watched. I waited. Dad called for toasts as the sun dipped below the bay. Glasses raised. Iced tea for some, beer for others, wine for Mom's teacher friends. Austin spoke first, voice booming across the yard. To the woman who held this family together through everything. Cheers erupted. Vanessa added a tearful bit about the best mom anyone could ask for. I stayed quiet, my plate slowly emptying, my eyes tracking every movement. Austin pulled Vanessa aside near the garden hedge, their whisper carried on the coastal breeze. Just keep her distracted. Don't let her interfere. Vanessa nodded, eyes darting toward me. I pretended not to hear, sipping my tea slowly. Music started. Bluetooth speaker pumping classic rock. Couples danced on the brick patio. I slipped to an empty table, refilling my tea from a sweating pitcher. Another relative approached. Your siblings are really on fire tonight. Austin's comeback story, Vanessa's adventure abroad. You must be so thrilled for them. I nodded vaguely, watching Austin glad hand someone who looked like a banker, gesturing wildly about equity rounds and market disruption. Vanessa scrolled her phone, showing London travel brochures to a circle of her sorority friends. Their excitement seemed genuine. Mine was non-existent. Austin stood suddenly, lifting the entire soup tureen from the main table. Vanessa giggled beside him, covering her mouth. The remaining guests quieted, sensing something shift in the air. He cleared his throat theatrically, like he was about to accept an award. Before dessert, just a quick family announcement. His voice carried across the now silent yard. Grandpa Walter left an inheritance for the whole family. Company shares plus a trust fund. Pretty substantial. Pause for effect. Belle gets nothing because she was always too busy playing doctor to actually care about family. The silence dropped like a stage curtain. Forks froze mid-air. Mom's smile turned to stone. Dad set down his beer bottle slowly. I met Austin's gaze directly, my voice steady. That's completely wrong. Grandpa never said it was for everyone. His face flushed crimson. You calling me a liar in front of everyone? The tureen tilted forward in his hands. Hot clam chowder cascaded over my head in slow motion. Scalding broth burning my scalp. Chunks of potato and clam sliding down my neck, soaking into my dress. Gasps erupted around the yard. Vanessa covered her mouth, eyes wide with theatrical shock that fooled no one who actually knew her. Austin slammed the empty tureen down on the table. China cracked. You have 15 minutes to get out of this family. Vanessa stepped forward, her voice syrupy sweet with false concern. Just accept reality, Bree. You don't have a share in this. You never did. I wiped chowder from my eyelashes with a napkin someone handed me. reached into my leather bag with broth-soaked hands, pulled out the thick folder I'd been carrying for 3 months, slammed it at center table. Plates rattled, glasses tipped. "Fine," I said, voice cutting through the shocked silence. 15 minutes from now, everything you think you have vanishes." I opened the folder, flipped to the notarized will copy, and read aloud in my clearest doctor voice. "I, Walter Harrison, being of sound mind and body, hereby bequeath my pharmaceutical company shares, valued at $4.2 million and the trust fund of $2.1 million, solely to my granddaughter, Belle Harrison, who alone continues my life's mission in medicine through her pediatric oncology practice." I looked up, meeting every eye. Explicitly excluded are those family members who showed persistent indifference during my lifetime. Mom's hand flew to her chest. Dad stared blankly, beer forgotten. Austin's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Vanessa's giggle died mid-breath. I pointed to the legal clauses. "See these signatures? 3 witnesses, notary seal, filed with the county, no provision for the cold-hearted. That's you, Austin. That's you, Vanessa." A cousin leaned in, scanning the pages. "Holy hell, it's legitimate! He actually cut them out!" Murmurs spread like wildfire. Phones emerged from pockets, flashes captured the documents. Someone whispered, "He disinherited them completely." Austin lunged for the papers. I pulled them back. "Touch these and it's evidence tampering. Try me." He froze, veins bulging in his neck. Vanessa tugged his sleeve desperately. "Do something." Dad finally spoke, voice weak and hollow. "Walter never mentioned any of this." I turned to him coldly. "Because you visited him twice in 5 years." "Twice." Turned to Mom. "Birthday cards don't count as showing up." She looked away, my bracelet suddenly heavy on her wrist. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some edging toward exits. An aunt muttered, "Always knew there was more to those favoritism stories." Another nodded. Belle was the only one who actually visited him. Austin's face went from red to purple. "This can't stand. We'll get lawyers. We'll contest this will." I tapped a highlighted paragraph. "Read Clause 7B. Any legal challenge triggers the no contest clause. You sue, you void any claim you thought you had. Forever. Even if some judge felt sorry for you." Kayla's eyes darted toward the driveway, calculating escape routes. "But we need that money. We're drowning in debt." I closed the folder calmly. "Your assumptions cost you everything. Never assume." Chowder cooled sticky on my skin and hair, but the yard heated with tension thick enough to cut. Phones recorded discreetly now. A neighbor was definitely live streaming to a group chat. Comments scrolled audibly. "Oh my God, she got everything." "They're completely cut out." "This is insane." Mom reached out with a trembling hand. "Belle, let's talk about this privately. This doesn't need to be public." I stayed rooted. Public humiliation deserves public correction. Dad rubbed his temples, looking 10 years older. Austin kicked a chair hard enough to crack wood. Vanessa scrolled frantically on her phone, probably Googling how to break a will. Guests formed clusters debating authenticity. I pointed to the date stamp. Signed 8 months before Grandpa passed. Updated after your last no-show on his birthday. Austin, after you bailed on Thanksgiving. "Vanessa," Austin roared, "you hid this! That's fraud!" I shrugged. "Private designation per lawyer's orders. You announced first, remember? About 30 seconds ago, actually." The silence thickened. Chowder dripped from my hair onto the checkered tablecloth, staining it brown. Not a single person moved to help me clean up. Finally, a guest broke the tension. "Congratulations, Belle, you actually deserved this." Sparse, awkward clapping followed. Austin's glare could have melted steel. Vanessa whispered urgently in his ear. He shook her off violently. I folded the will back into my bag carefully. Clock's ticking on those 15 minutes. I slid 3 additional stapled packets from the folder's inner pocket, spreading them across the table like a poker player revealing a royal flush. "Packet 1, I announced calmly. IRS Form 4549, official seal, addressed to Austin Harrison, taxpayer ID ending 7743. Notice of audit for HealthSync. $750,000 in marketing expenses with 0 supporting invoices. $520,000 in equipment leases for assets never actually delivered. Closing assessment, civil fraud penalty of 75%, criminal referral pending review. I looked up at Austin. Your bankruptcy attorney forwarded this when I inquired about liens. Public record now. Austin tore it open, paper ripping. They can't prove anything. They already did, that's what audits are for. I picked up packet 2. Single page from Grandpa's trust. Clause 7b highlighted. In the event any beneficiary, heir, or claimant initiates litigation contesting validity or distribution of this trust, such party shall immediately forfeit all rights to any benefit herein and become liable for all opposing legal fees. I showed the notary seal dated 2 months after the will. Grandpa added this after your last skipped visit for that Vegas trip. Austin's lawyer mailed me the update. Standard procedure for sole beneficiaries. Vanessa's lips trembled. So if we sue, we get nothing and have to pay your legal bills? I nodded. Correct, Grandpa was thorough. Packet 3, 8 pages, bank letterhead. Transfer of promissory note dated December 2022. Original principal, $1.8 million from Coastal Community Bank to Dr. Gabrielle Harrison. My signature notarized beside the bank VP. I flipped to page 4. Acceleration clause triggered by your default. Page 6. Foreclosure timeline notice. Auction scheduled for this Monday. Final sale Friday. The yard went completely silent except for distant waves. I bought your defaulted note, I continued, to protect Grandpa's legacy from creditors. Your continued default triggered the cross-collateral clause. Condo, car, everything with Austin's signature. Austin's scream shattered wine glasses on the nearby table. He hurled the contract at me, pages fluttering like confetti in the coastal breeze. Vanessa's knees buckled. She sank into a chair. Mom whimpered, "This is cruel, Belle." I looked at her directly. "No, this is consequence," a guest whispered loudly. "She bought out his entire bankruptcy debt. That's next level." Austin bolted toward me. I stepped behind the grill, hot coals still glowing. 2 police officers appeared at the garden gate. Uniforms crisp, expressions neutral. "Welfare check," the sergeant stated. "Neighbor reported threats and assault." "Who called?" I raised my chowder-covered hand. "That would be me from the bathroom. All evidence is here." Austin jabbed a finger at me. "She's the one attacking us. This is financial abuse." The sergeant glanced at the chowder crusted in my hair, then at Austin's spotless polo shirt. "I see who got assaulted. This is civil court territory, unless someone wants to press charges for the soup incident." Vanessa clutched the trust document copy, voice breaking. "We're going to be homeless by Friday," I confirmed calmly. "Foreclosure proceeds Monday, auction Friday, correct." Dad supported Mom back toward the house, both of them suddenly looking ancient. Guests vanished into the darkness like ghosts, car engines starting in rapid succession. Austin kicked the table leg again. Wood splintered. The sergeant's hand moved to his belt. "Last warning, son." Austin froze, hands shaking with rage. Vanessa followed the officers to the driveway, pleading. "Please, there must be options." "Bankruptcy court reopens tomorrow," the sergeant advised. "That's your best shot." The yard cleared within minutes. Lights clicked off. Fire pit embers died. I zipped my bag shut, walked to my car, and drove back to Boston through the darkness. 4 months later, I heard the foreclosure notice was taped to Austin's door. Red stamp glaring under flickering hallway lights. Auction followed. Condo sold for pennies on the dollar. Bankruptcy refiled. Debts discharged, except the IRS lien which follows you forever. He rents a studio above a laundromat now. Walls thin, washer vibrations constant. Vanessa quit USM mid-semester. Tuition unpaid, credits frozen in limbo. She works full shifts at a downtown Portland coffee chain now. Apron perpetually stained. Tips meager, double espressos for cruise ship tourists. Fake smiles through bone-deep exhaustion. Dreams of London faded to inventory counts and cleaning espresso machines. A handwritten letter arrived from Mom and Dad 2 months ago. Envelope scented with Mom's old perfume. Pages of apologies. "We were so blind. We failed you. Please forgive us." I read it once by my fireplace, then fed it to the flames, watched the ashes scatter, never responded. The pharmaceutical shares transferred seamlessly. $4.2 million in blue chip stock. Dividends rolling in quarterly. Board seat offered. I accepted, attending meetings remotely. Company profits now fund expansions in pediatric cardiac research. The trust's $2.1 million liquidated clean within 60 days. I established the Walter Harrison Scholarship Fund. Full rides for low-income Maine students pursuing pre-med from rural communities. First recipients: 2 kids from coastal towns, their essays echoing Grandpa's passion for accessible health care. One wants to be a rural family doctor, the other pediatric surgery. I blocked every number. Austin's burner phone attempts, Vanessa's desperate pleas, parents' landline. Changed locks on my Boston condo. Security system upgraded. Deleted contacts, photos, old group chats, complete clean slate. Colleagues noticed the shift. Fewer family mentions, sharper focus in the OR. Natalie toasted the scholarship fund launch over wine in my apartment. Legacy secured properly, she said, raising her glass. I spotted Austin once at a gas station in Portsmouth, unkempt, pumping cheap fuel into a rusted Honda. Our eyes met across the pumps. He looked away first, shame and rage competing on his face. Vanessa served me unknowingly last month at the Portland Airport coffee kiosk. Name tag shiny and new. Order taken mechanically, no recognition. I paid cash, left no tip, boarded my flight without a word. Mom and Dad tried one more holiday card. I returned it unopened, marked return to sender in red ink. Because here's what I learned. What Grandpa tried to tell me all along. True family isn't about shared blood or last names. It's about respect, earned and returned. It's about showing up when it matters, not just when it's convenient. And sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money at all. It's knowing your worth and never letting anyone convince you otherwise.